Alright, so this video is going to take you through the process of how to do that little Photopea challenge step by step. So as much as I would like you to kind of practice on your own and try to figure it out, this video is meant to help you through the steps. So step number 1, it says open up a new page. The width is going to be 8 inches, the height's going to be 10 inches, and 300 dpi. Or you can set the width, you can keep it as pixels, 2400 by 3000 pixels. So in order to start a new project, you're going to hit New Project. And this is where you're going to put your measurements. So I'm going to actually, for good practice, I'm going to call this Photopea. And so here's where you can change your pixels to inches. Now before you do anything else, good practice again is to set up your DPI first. So DPI and PPI mean the same thing, whether they say dots per inch or pixels per inch. That's what it stands for. So now that I have it set to inches, I can change the width to 8. I can change the height to 10. And there we go. 8, 10, 300. Okay? If you don't want to deal with the inches, you can always just change it to 2400, 3000. But again, it's a good rule of thumb to change the DPI first. Background white, completely fine. Now, it says to add a layer. Your layers are located, I need to expand my window here. Here's my layers window. It's at the bottom of the layers window and it's a folded page. So you can see I had the background, now I have a layer 1. And on here, it's asking you to make a flower or a bug, anything, just one object, not a lot of detail, but you do want to have a couple of colors. So I'm going to use my brush tool, it's right here. My options are over here, so if I wanted to change the size, I can go like, drag it like this. I can also use, there's the parentheses or the brackets next to the letter P on your keyboard. So if you use those, you can make it bigger and smaller that way. So I'm going to make, let's just say I'm going to just make a simple flower. So to pick colors, you're always going to click on this foreground color first, and you can make your brush bigger and smaller. You can change your colors like that, and I'm going to make a little flower. Now, if you notice, I don't know if you could see it. See how it looks like there's little chunks out of it? That's called the spacing. Now, if I went back to my brush tool and I went over here, there's nothing about the spacing. There's another window right here, and it gives me a couple of more options. I do have my angle and my hardness, but here's the spacing. I'm going to bring it down to 1. Watch the difference. See how it's a little smoother? So if you run into that where if you need to change the spacing, you absolutely can do that. By getting rid of this, you just click on that icon again. So again, I'm going to make my, whoop, I forgot to add my layer. I did undo and I didn't have the layer. Okay, so here's my layer. I'm making my flower. Just like that. You can also use the paint bucket if you want to dump a color in, as long as you have a contained space. I hit it twice so it also fills it completely in. Then you can add some more color as you want to. Brush. Like I said, you can get complex or keep it as simple as you want. Just make sure that this image is on its own layer. Okay. So I'm making a flower. You can make it whatever image you want. You want to do a car, you want to do a robot. It's completely up to you. Alright, and I'm going to use that fill-in bucket. So if I click it once, you can see, you might see a little bit of a line, but it's always a good rule of thumb, click it twice. And if you want to get that color back, click on it right there, and it'll let you use that brush color. Okay. All right. Now the next step, it talks about where we are going to add another layer. And on this layer, we're going to use a gradient. So you're going to go to the gradient tool, which shares a button with the paint bucket. And you have some presets. If you hit this arrow right here, you get some presets, not many. But if you click on the actual gradient itself, you can do the gradient editor. So you can, it looks a little different than Pixlr, but a lot of similarities. These are your stops. So if you move them closer together, you're going to have a more dramatic gradient change. You could switch the places. If you want to add a gradient, you hit the plus, or you just hit underneath the gradient. It gives you another one. If you want to delete it, delete a gradient, you just select it and hit delete. So if you want to change the color of these, you're going to select one, but then you're going to click this square right here. And let's say I want to do a light blue. And let's say I want to do another blue, a darker one. There we go. So there's my gradient. I say OK. I have a linear gradient. Now you might notice that it goes on top of your picture. That's okay. You can play around with the different lengths. There's also different types of gradients. There's a radial gradient. You can reverse it. You can do angle gradient. It kind of goes around, going from first color to second color. Reflective. So it goes from color B to color A back to color B. And depending on the line, it makes the gradient more dramatic, or more quick or slower. A diamond gradient, very similar to the radial gradient. Whoops, let me get there. There we go. In which instead of a circle, it makes a diamond, and you can reverse it as well. So you kind of set up the gradient the way you want. Don't worry, the flower's still there. It's just underneath. So if this is the way I want it, I'm going to reverse the order, make sure that my gradient tool is under, or my gradient layer is behind the drawing. Okay. Now I'm going to make a copy of the drawing. I'm going to use the Move tool. It used to be called the Arrange tool, and it allows me to move it around. Now, if I want to change the size, in the video, I think they went to Image, Transform. Nope, I guess that wasn't it. I forget what it was. It was somewhere where you can actually change, select the size and stuff like that. And I don't even know what it is, because honestly, yeah, there it is, scale. Honestly, what I do instead is I'm on the Move tool, and I just make sure Transform controls are active, so it gives me those handles that I can change the size. Okay, which is going to be something I'm going to do, but I have to make a copy of this drawing. It's really quite easy. There's a couple ways that I can make a copy of the drawing. I can make a copy of the drawing by right-clicking on the layer and going to Duplicate Layer. That's one way. There's a shortcut on my keyboard, Command J makes a copy. Get rid of it. You can also go the old-fashioned way, Layer, Duplicate Layer. Okay, so there's a couple of ways you can do it. There's even a way you can literally take this layer and drag it on top of the new layer window, and it gives, or button, and it gives you a new layer. Okay, bunch of ways you can make a new layer. Make a new layer, and this one says put it next to the drawing and make it smaller. So just going to arrange them proper. Got one right next to the other. One's a little smaller. Perfect. Then I want to change the color. So to change the color easily, I can do Image, Adjustments, and Hue Saturation. The shortcut is Command U. So if I go ahead and I go to the hue and I move the hue around, you can see both colors are changing. That's just the easiest way to do it. If I want to make it monochromatic, I can hit Colorize. But I probably don't want to colorize it. I probably just want to change the color. But you see that all the colors change. Okay. And now the last thing, I'm going to create a title for the work by typing on the page. Okay, so I'm going to go to the Type tool. I am going to make a text box. And inside here is where I'm going to put my typing. So like Pixlr, here's all of my options. I can pick a color. Let's say that I want to go with a color like this. I can change the size. I can change the font. So I haven't even put text on here yet. So I made the text box and I just click inside. There we go. I just started just randomly typing, but you can see how it's set up. So I'm going to give it a title. Okay. And I commit to it. So if I'm on the Move tool, I can certainly make this bigger and smaller. I can move it around. But if I want to do any changes of font, I have to go back to the type tool. So if I wanted to change the color, this is where I would go to change the color. If I wanted to change the font, this is where I would go to change the font. Okay. Oops. Did not want that one. Okay. If I wanted, now, if I go over here to these options, there's a lot more options that I can pick. Let me get out of this for a second. Yeah. So if I come over here, I could change the size like this. There are a couple of more options if I wanted to make them bold, if I wanted to make them taller, if I wanted to make them wider. Okay, so the more options, not that you have to, but there are more options right in this window right here. Okay. Paragraph, if I had multiple paragraphs, it would change the spaces of the lines, and there's a lot of things you can explore. Okay, so I have it centered. I like the way this looks. Now I'm going to put a stroke and a gradient. These are located, if I go to Layer, they're called Layer Styles. It's right here, and Blending Options. So again, Layer, Layer Style, Blending Options. You can get to this pretty quickly by just right-clicking right here, and it takes you to Blending Options. Okay, so here is all of your options. You might remember these from previous classes. So a stroke is an outline. So there's my stroke. Now it's not enough to check it. I also have to select it because my options aren't here. So it's not enough to check it. I also have to select it by just clicking on it. Here's my options. I can go bigger. I can change the color. I could make it more opaque. I can change the position from inside to outside to inside. We probably want to keep it outside. I'm going to keep it a darker color. And I'm also asking for you guys to do a gradient overlay. Gradient overlay puts it right on top of that inside color, and the gradient is right here. So if I wanted to change the gradient, I can change the gradient. I could change the style of the gradient. Whoops, it didn't commit, did it? Let's do this. Forget to say OK. There we go. So I can change the radial gradient like we did before. I can change the angle of the gradient. So explore some possibilities, but that is a done deal. All right. Now when it says when you're done, you go to File, Export as JPEG, and it's going to put it in your Downloads folder. So just make sure that when you save it as a JPEG, it's called Photopea, you have to find it in your Downloads folder. If you're still working from day to day, if you want to take a break from it, File, Save as PSD, and let's expand to this window. On your desktop, you should have another folder. So I'm on the desktop. I'm going to hit New Folder, and I'm going to call this Photopea, because we're just exploring Photopea. Okay, and this is where you should keep your image. Okay. But if you are done with it, you can go to File, Export as JPEG, and say Save. So if you're wondering where it went, I'm going to go to the Finder, I'm going to go to Downloads, and there it is. So at some point you want to make sure you drag it from your desktop, or drag it from your downloads into your desktop, into your Photopea folder. Okay? So hopefully this gave you some information. You can view this as much as you want. You can review. You can put me on mute. You can do closed captions so you don't have to hear me talk, but it'll have the instructions. So good luck.